I'm Julie Legg, author of The Missing Piece and diagnosed with ADHD at 52.
And I'm Gel Legg, diagnosed at 55.
Welcome to ADH Difference. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the flip side of ADHD. And it really stems from quite a common conversation that's had with some newly diagnosed ADHDers. And that is, it doesn't look like you've got ADHD. And this normally comes from colleagues, friends or family. And they don't particularly understand the dynamics of ADHD. But rather than coming down very hard on them, because it's quite a difficult thing to hear when you're trying to understand your own ADHD and starting that journey, rather than coming hard on those people, I just thought it was going to be good to chat about the dynamics of ADHD and why it can be confusing for some people to understand how complex ADHD can be.
I think it's extremely confusing. It's certainly confusing for those of us that have ADHD, and I think it's doubly confusing perhaps for those who don't have ADHD, don't have such an intimate understanding of it. They can't be in our heads. They can't know what it's like. They can empathize and they can seek to understand, and we deeply appreciate that. But you know, it's sometimes I can't even really explain what it's like to have ADHD. Sometimes I can't even understand myself. Sometimes, because it's my norm. It's only by looking at people who I would consider to be very neurotypical that I can perhaps start to understand what my ADHD really is. Mm-hmm. The symptoms can be explained. The results and the actions that lead to the results can be explained, but exactly trying to put it in a box and describe it, it's not always so easy, is it?
Yeah.
I do want to just start by saying something. Often people will say you don't look or sound like you have ADHD. I think a good way of thinking, if you're on the end of that comment and you have ADHD, is to either think, remind yourself, or say, you can only, in science, you can only describe or measure something with the right tools. So it's a bit like saying, in their opinion, it's not that far to the moon, as I've got my tape measure out. You know, you can't measure the distance from where you are to the moon with a tape measure any more than using a tape measure can measure the width of an atom. You have to have the right tool. So if someone says to you, you don't look or sound like you have ADHD, they don't have the right tool to know whether they're right or wrong.
Unless that's coming from a psychologist.
A psychologist, yeah.
Or a psychiatrist.
Yeah,
obviously, listen to them. They know what they're talking about.
But we're talking about, you know, the regular people in your life, your family, your work colleagues, your friends. So it's really important to always understand the idea that you know, to measure something, you need the right tool. And so someone's comment, you don't look or sound, is as irrelevant as saying how far it is to the moon based on this tape measure. You can't measure it, so it's irrelevant, if that makes any sense.
I thought we could give some examples why it might be so confusing for onlookers or observers to try and figure things out. And just really it's emphasising the complexity of how ADHD can be. So, for example, we can overthink and underthink. And overthinking can take minutes, hours, days, months, sort of going around in loops, overthinking a particular subject or issue or challenge. And then we can also underthink and do things very impulsively. And so, again, to an observer, you know, which one are you? Well, the fact is, we can be everything. We don't have to be put in this box saying you have ADHD, therefore you must overthink. Well, we certainly can. Yes, we do often, but also we can underthink. So I thought we'd talk about some of the yin and yang of ADHD and just to show how complex it can be.
As starting with the overthinking and underthinking, we can actually do it simultaneously at the same time. So we can someone can observe us overthinking a problem, going round and round in circles, not being able to break out, and then instantaneously, suddenly picking the phone up and calling someone and saying something, and not thinking that through. And to the observer, it's like, well, hang on a sec, you've been mulling and overthinking on this, and then you've reacted in a rash, hurried way without thinking it through. You've made it worse now. So that's overthinking, underthinking exactly at the same time.
But depending on the environment, if they only ever observe you, perhaps underthinking and making those impulsive phone calls or whatever it may be, they don't see the other side of you, which is often hidden because thinking's, you can't see that.
The underthinking tends to be more observable insofar as it's your actions, it's your reactions and actions and what you do. The overthinking is less observable because it's an internal monologue that keeps going round and round and round.
While we're talking about over and unders, there's also oversharing and undersharing. And I know for me, when I'm in a very comfortable space, or I think it's a safe space to do it, I'll overshare. And sometimes I'll pull myself up thinking, that was probably too much information based on people's reactions or the amount of time that it took me to explain a certain thing. I think, maybe that was oversharing too much. But then I can undershare as well. And that yin and yang is I'll undershare because I'm putting the brakes on myself because of too much oversharing. So depending on who's with me in a room, they might see that I'm a very open person, or they might see me as quite an insular, closed person who doesn't share very much at all. It's still me. It's just the environment that can trigger the two extremes.
Great. Yep. I agree with that.
Great.
Solves it.
So I know we've touched on underthinking and impulsivity, but there's also impulsivity and then procrastination. We can do both extremely well too. I think procrastination is something where we think and we think. Yes, it is overthinking, but it's also we just delay the inevitable. We delay it because probably it doesn't hit our dopamine levels, or we see it as too hard, and we'll think about making that phone call or writing that report or doing that tax return. We'll leave that for another day because we can't deal with it right now.
Yes, and all of these examples we're talking about today, it's always at the root of it, it's always about the dopamine. It's always about if my dopamine levels feel satiated and I'm fine, then I'm probably going to procrastinate on doing some important things, stuff that I don't need the reward of doing them. And that can apply to exciting and fun things too. But if I feel like I need the dopamine levels to be brought back up, then I'm likely to act in a good or bad way, productive or unproductive way, but thought through or not thought through. Take your chances what comes out of that. So recently, one of the things we've been doing, I know this comes up so often, is this word of the age, mindfulness. But actually, I like old-fashioned words. We've had some big decisions recently where we've had to go one way or the other, and normally we just react and go one way. But that will deal with that problem by going in a different direction. But we have started to sleep on things, and not just give it one night, but give it several nights. I think that stops us going from the frying pan to the fire in some decisions. But also, ironically, it does the other thing too. After a few days, you sort of lose your motivation to even make a decision. You forget about it and move on. And the big decisions, they're important decisions that have an impact on the future. So we're really difficult people to read, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
If you're trying to sort of imagine someone, a life coach, and I know they're ADHD coaches and they do a lot of good work, but if you just got a regular life coach to try and or PA or someone to organise you, and they didn't know you had ADHD, they'd probably run screaming out the door after a week. It would be impossible.
Yeah. So another one is being very disorganised and organised in different aspects of our life. And again, who might see you being extremely organised, pedantic. Yet at home, you could be very disorganised and lose your keys and, run out of milk or leave the hose on.
Chaos.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't mean that you're one thing or the other. Yes, you can be both. And it can be quite confusing and frustrating for us ADHDers. Why can we do something so well in one environment and not in the other? And we'll get on to some of these reasons shortly.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, and I've heard lots of, or known of examples over the years of people presenting at work in an incredibly well-presented, groomed, organised manner, and then you go visit them in their home or see their car. Good examples, yes, cars. Their cars can be complete travelling bomb sites, absolutely chaotic, and you almost don't know where to sit. You don't want to sit in there. But as a person, they always present so tidily and nicely. They're not scruffy people, but their cars are just tips on wheels.
Guilty as charged.
Well, you're not too bad. I can think of some examples that really should have been condemned. But I think in those cases, for the people, it's where you put your priorities. You know, you can't beat yourself up because you're very organized and tidy in one place and not in another. Because if that other place has no dopamine hit for you, no priorities, no interest, then that's just how it is. You're too busy focusing somewhere else and getting your hits and your life happiness from somewhere else. Whereas without ADHD, I think people were more likely to have a more balanced approach across the board, more typical. Yeah. Everything sort of seems to fit together like a nice jigsaw puzzle. Whereas with ADHD, our lives aren't completed jigsaw puzzles. There's little bits here that are done and some parts of the sky over here in the clock tower, and the rest of it's just a pile of bits, and half of them are upside down or under the couch, you know.
Or lost.
Yeah.
Another one I thought was good was empathy. So to be empathetic in some aspects of your life or appear to be very unempathetic in others. And I think for me, I'm really empathetic for situations and people that I really care about, me personally. And so I can appear to be very unempathetic in other situations, which, you know, even talking about that almost sounds like a slur on my character. I'd like to be seen as empathetic, but I can't be empathetic to everything. And I guess if I was, I have no time. I'd just be a dribbling mess, probably. But yeah, so my empathy is in certain areas of interest. But if I'm not interested in that area, then I won't be.
Okay, and so in that area, if I'm thinking in terms of empathy, whether I'm empathetic or not, it can vary hugely. So one day I can find myself empathetic to the plight of someone or people or a situation, and the next day I've just completely no interest in it whatsoever. So catch me on a good day and I'm all ears. Catch me on not a bad day, that's not the right word, but catch me on a different day and I'm going to be a lot sharper and quicker and come on, sort this out. We've been through this before. Bam, bam, bam. We've had this conversation. That's not very empathetic. Again, it's difficult to read us because we're capable of every emotion and every good thing and every bad thing in a character, but you can't always predict when it's going to be. It depends at that moment where our dopamine's at, yes, and where our focus is at. It's like this other part of our brain it's just not working the same way. And so it doesn't regulate our reactions, behavior and so forth the same in a predictable way, which you can nail 9 times out of 10.
Which I think you've hit the nail on the head. And we talk about regulation. And that's the whole thing with an ADHD brain, right? So it's, whether it's big emotions or whatever it may be.
Or small emotions.
Yes.
When they're not, which is exactly what with empathy, non-empathy, big and small emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so another yin and yang, I guess, would be difficulty multitasking. Yet in other times where we hit every deadline and we're sorted, we can be both. I mean, I used to be the hit every deadline situation at work. But at home, when I was in a safe space, my relaxed space, I'd have several things on the go. I'd be washing the dishes, cooking dinner and watering the garden all at the same time, and not particularly achieving in all of those tasks. But you know what I mean? I was more relaxed at home to go back to my normal self.
So hyper-focusing on something that's absolutely, whether it's writing or something creative or practical, whatever, we can be hyper-focused on something for hours and then days, and so everything else gets neglected. Where suddenly we can turn around and do everything at once and, you know, tidy the whole house, sort out all those little things that needed doing, achieve things, that's when I think we see all of those little tasks as one task. And so suddenly we hyper-focus on that one task. So we gather up the little ones and say, oh my word, you're like a human hurricane, dynamo. It's incredible. I can't believe we've been doing this recently. We've had open homes where sort of people come to see the house. And I think we lose a little faith in ourselves to have the energy to keep doing that level of tidying up. And I never cease to be amazed when I turn around and Jules has gone through the house and tidied a whole bunch of things. And I guess secretly you'll look outside, oh my word, all the spiders' webs have gone and the garden's looking great and everything's tidy. We sort of allocate different jobs we do. And so a whole bunch of complex tasks that we could easily leave suddenly all get done very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's the opposite to living in a mess. Then come on another day when we're not expecting anyone to come to the house and we just, doesn't matter.
Pretty relaxed.
Yeah.
Another flip side would be being really good in a crisis, and a thing known as ADHD paralysis. Again, two very, very different things. Good in a crisis is what's the problem? Yep, sorted. With our quick thinking and thinking outside the box and problem solving, we can be really good in a crisis. To the point. And yet the next day or even that afternoon, paralysis can set in when there are so many options and we don't know which one to take.
Yep.
So it's,
again, dopamine. Emergency, do something, get it sorted now, bam. Now, if that triggers this opportunity to raise the dopamine, bam, we're the first in. If that dopamine is not required or is not triggered by the events unfolding in front of you, then it's whatever, it's your problem. You do. Stop making a mountain out of a molehill, whatever. So can't you see it's a bit...
So I've got one more. One more. And that is making careless mistakes versus perfectionism. And I know that I can be both as well. And again, this all comes down or back to what was said earlier in the podcast. And that was, it doesn't look like you've got ADHD. So we're talking about what people observe of us. And it can change. So in a work environment will be very, very different from a social environment, which will be different yet again from a home environment. So it is quite interesting. I can be quite gregarious when I'm socializing, or I can be quite introverted, depending on how I'm feeling at the time, my energy levels, the people that I'm socializing with, if I feel safe around them, or if they're strangers, or maybe that's a good thing, or maybe that's a bad thing, depending on the situation. So I remember an old acquaintance, we'd known each other for 20 odd years, and we were having an open conversation, and she said, oh, when I first met you, I thought you were stuck up. And me? No. Oh, you were just really quiet. You weren't really involved in conversation. So, it really shocked me. That's the last thing I felt in that situation. I felt quite intimidated in that group of friends early on, all those years ago. So I kind of held back from contributing just in case my conversation was wrong, or I was too intense, or I overshared. Observation, eh?
So back to the careless mistakes, or do a great job, hyper-focus. So perfectionism, sorry, yes. So if I'm motivated, I actually get tested on that aspect of ADHD on a regular basis due to the nature of my work. Still do a lot of web development. So you get a list of, for instance, I had about 140 things I had to do this last week, pieces of data that had to be changed. So if I'm really motivated, which I was, and focused, then the odds are they'll all get sorted and they'll get done well. If I'm doing that under duress because I'd rather be doing something else, my mind's not concentrating, then I can't kick in something to make it accurate. And I'm likely to get the result back. You've missed 10 of them, 20, whatever, which I won't have done. So, one way of dealing with that is giving us the flexibility to find that moment when we're motivated to do it in a work environment, forcing us to do it. at this moment and it must be done, sometimes it's not the best thing to do. Whereas say, look, well, I'll get this out of the way and do this, then later, then I'll give that my attention. Listen, if you're a boss, to that person who knows how their mind works. Or say, look, it's got to be done by 5 o'clock, but you don't have to do it now. Right, okay, I'll do it at 4 o'clock and I'll really hyper-focus and I'll probably nail it. You seem to be rushing it. I'm not rushing it, I'm focusing. Because if you give me 3 hours to do this job and it's meant to take an hour or whatever, I'll probably just wander off and my brain will disappear somewhere else and I'll make loads of mistakes. Give me an hour and give me a chance to really get into it. So we can deliver. So how do you judge someone in a work appraisal, annual appraisal, in that sloppy, makes lots of mistakes, or very accurate and very fast? We can be both. So from managing us in a work environment or managing others, it depends what angle you're coming from, understanding their strengths and weaknesses and giving them the job or at the right time can get different results. So we're neither sloppy nor super perfectionist accurate. We can be both.
Yeah, absolutely.
True? Yeah.
Yep. This is the flip side of ADHD.
Yeah.
So also I think it was interesting maybe to reflect on child versus adult, as in me as a child, me as an adult. Same for you, Jill. We're the same person. Well, we're the same person. I'm the same person. But my dynamics or my character may have sort of changed somewhat throughout the time. I remember, I thought of myself as a hyperactive child, but it might not have come across as that, because I was also very shy because I was masking and trying to fit in. But my head has always been hyperactive. And so if I was to take my thoughts out and draw a picture for you about how I thought about my hyperactivity, it would look crazy, busy, creative, wild. And as the years have gone by, particularly since my ADHD diagnosis coming up 3 years ago now, I actually feel that I can express that hyperactivity more now because I own it more. So I'm more likely to be a little bit more flamboyant in a social situation than I did when I was a child. So same person, same brain, maybe just different ways of expressing that, which can be observed in different ways too.
Yeah. And of course, as we go through life, we acquire skills and get older and experienced, and we find tools, mental tools to adapt to situations, but we never change underneath. As adults, we're the same as when we were children. I think any idea, well, I don't believe in growing out of it. I think you sort of grow into it. So you as an adult, you acquire these skills to deal with it better or not. But all through my adult life, I've always looked forward to making it to a certain age, around now actually, where I'm still reasonably fit and healthy and compos mentis and so on. And I'm looking forward now to growing down and going back to enjoying some of those hobbies and interests as a child, the things that brought me, unadulterated joy and, wonderment, bewilderment, whatever the word is. There's all sorts of things I'm still interested in that I want to try and sort of bring back into my life because it's a full circle thing.
So talking about full circle, just as we're wrapping this up, the idea behind the flip side of ADHD was really to say observers will observe part of you, but not the all of you. Some things will be seen and easy to observe, like actions. Others will be impossible to see, like your overthinking and your internal dialogue that you have. And so try not to be too upset if someone says it doesn't look like you've got ADHD. Know that they probably misunderstand ADHD or are misinformed.
They certainly don't have the right tools to measure it.
Correct. But those psychologists and psychiatrists who specialise in ADHD will do so. They'll have something more meaningful to say on that matter. But it's okay to be a bit of everything. You can have extremes. You can be both. And you don't need to be put in a box. You don't need to give yourself a hard time. You can be everything. And you can be your wonderful self and have those non-regulated ADHD traits. And one last thing while I think of this too, they see ADHD as being on a spectrum. not the spectrum as in autism, but a spectrum. And so it is possible that you can have all of those traits, yet some of them, I wouldn't say mild, but some of them are maybe not so observable because you've put these little strategies in place, or over the years you've worked out that, you need to put your keys on a hook, otherwise you'll lose them forever. You know what I mean? So some of those ADHD traits may seem minimized, only because you've got these coping mechanisms in place.
I also think it would be reasonable to suggest, and I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, that whilst you may be at a certain point, a certain place on that spectrum of ADHD, it can move, I would have thought, and it could have moved. It could move according to life's events, say leading up to becoming a parent, or being a parent, or getting married, or divorced, or having big impacts on your life. And as you move through life, you gain coping skills and learn things that may move you back down the spectrum. Then an event pushes you back up.
No, I agree with that.
Maybe.
There you go.
There you go.
Complex, and that is the flip side of ADHD. Thank you for listening.